Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Out of the Blue, the Friday afternoon coffee break chat about all things to do with school marketing, brought to you by the team at Blue Apple Education. My name's Mark Davis. I'm joined on today's chat by David Lim, and we're going to be looking at some of the common mistakes that schools make on their websites. Hope you enjoyed the chat. I'm sure there's lots in there that you're going to be able to make some use of. I'll be back at the end of this episode with all the important information and some details about our next episode. In the meantime, let's join the chat. Hi everyone, today's coffee break chat is all about the common mistakes that schools make on their websites. It's something that we talk about all the time. David, you and I often have conversations about websites we've been reviewing and time again, those things that we see cropping up all the time. So we'll put you on the spot. What's the one that, I don't know if it annoys you the most, but the one that you see the most often that schools are making?
Well, I think right at this moment, the one that annoys me the most is what you didn't introduce me, and also I've made an extra special coffee today that you didn't ask what was in my cup. So I'm going to say that anyway, just before I talk about the websites. I'm
sorry, everybody. This is David Lim, who's obviously very precious about his attendance on our coffee break chat.
We are on a coffee break, so we need to know the coffee. So today I've got a Suave coffee, obviously, and that's from El Corte Inglés. It's one of their own coffee pods for the Nespresso machine. And I've added a lump of brown sugar in there as well today. And I don't know what it is, but I don't have sugar normally, certainly not at home. But if I go out for a coffee,
enough about the coffee.
I always put a sugar in my coffee when I go out, but I don't do it at home. So for today's show, I thought I'm going to make it feel like I'm out and about. I'm having a lovely coffee with crema, smooth crema on top, and it's called Suave, which I thought was very appropriate. Anyway,
have you quite finished about coffee?
Back to websites.
By the way, just so as you know, Builder's Tea again.
I've seen you drinking coffee. It's probably better that you're on Builder's Tea.
It's a good point, well made. Coffee and I do not do well. In fact, the very idea that we've branded these whole conversations as a coffee break is quite offensive to me.
Yeah, sorry about that. Tea break, coffee break.
What were we talking about?
It was what are the most common mistakes that schools make on their school website?
Yes.
And you asked me for one of those mistakes, and I think again it's one of those that's brought up in the workshops that you run, Mark, and it's to have a website that is not considering the target audience of the website. And what I mean by that is the people who are going to be using the website. You see so many of them with very child-focused or child-centric imagery on their cartoon characters, autumn leaves falling down the page. And I think that's just not really appropriate. It's the parents, it's potential staff looking at the site, the local community. And I think that's just done to death. But I think, it's completely wrong for who's looking at a school website.
Yeah. And it's not only that they've got that audience wrong. And you've got to remember that, these are grown-up people that are looking at your website and they're exposed to professional marketing all the time. So in order to gain their confidence in you as an organization, you've got to compete with all the other things that they're seeing in the rest of their lives. But I think the point you make about audience, if you expand that out a bit, those schools that perhaps aren't making that mistake of the cartoon characters, but perhaps aren't thinking about the range of audience that actually looks at a website. So it's making sure, and this is quite difficult, admittedly, but it's making sure that actually, yes, your website is the shop front of the school, and it's how you're going to attract parents to send their children to the school. But it's also the place where you want your existing parents to be able to go to get all the information that they want and that they need. And since COVID, it's very often a place that your pupils are going to in order to log on to their online learning. And then you've got your governors who want to use the website and want their own section on there. You've got Ofsted, you've got the local community. There's so many other people that look at a school website. And very often you see that lots of school websites are only really catering for one of those audiences. And if there isn't that marketing expertise in the school, it might well just be that it caters for existing parents. And that's, again, something that I see all of the time. Schools don't really have that ability to look at all the different people that need information from it.
Yeah, and I think the way to try and consider all those, the different audiences that you've just mentioned, Mark, is to take the time at the beginning, of that creating your website journey, and map out, establish who it's for, who the audiences are, and then map that out in the initial stages, because you've got to get that foundation right for everything else to build on. So yeah, it's really, really important to understand that at the beginning, and then actually have that plan in place before you start any work. Yeah,
it's definitely a missing link, I think. It's similar when anybody embarks on creating. It's the same with a prospectus, or they're creating a newsletter, or they're creating a website, and quite often we see schools trying to create their own websites. Is that they'll launch into that project, they'll launch into writing the prospectus, and you've just got this blank page to start working with. And obviously there's a process that you can go through to make that so much easier, and to plan out what it's for and what it's designed to do. That really helps, because once you know what you're trying to do with it, that helps the structure of it, and it helps the content that you're going to include. And what happens if you don't do that is everything gets thrown at it, and it becomes very verbose and perhaps really, really big. And that user journey is lost. That, let's take prospective parents. How is a prospective parent taken through the story and onboarded and convinced that the school is right? It's interesting, really. It's definitely a mistake I see quite often.
Yeah, and I think it's part of a bigger picture as well. We're talking about one platform here in terms of the website and a channel for marketing, but it's part of a bigger marketing strategy, and it's quite scary to primary schools, for example. But there needs to be some consideration before you start considering a prospectus and a website and your photography about the strategy and why you're doing it. Is it just to provide information, or is it actually a bit more than that? Is it to attract better teaching staff? Is it to fill pupil spaces? And so there's a wider consideration there that's needed, I think, which obviously is something that we help with all the time. And part of that is branding as well, understanding your brand and what that means, which I know we'll talk about in another episode. So I won't go on about that too much now.
Well, it's definitely one of the key mistakes that we see in a website, is that the brand is not being reflected, and an understanding actually of what a brand is, because you'll say, well, I don't think your brand is being reflected in the website, and the school will say, well, the logo's on there. So it is, and it's that broad scope of what a brand is all about. It is those key messages. It's all the things that we've talked about at length, really, to do with how you brand the school. When you talk about that user journey, so again, just bringing our conversation back to those mistakes that schools make on a website. The user journey definitely one, but it's that ultimate goal, isn't it? It's what you want somebody to do when they've visited your website. So it's the calls to action, and then making sure that you're feeding that admissions process. You're getting a form filled in so that you know who those parents are. There's nothing worse than schools saying, well, we don't know who visits our website. There are techniques like that you can capture those people, you can get them into an admissions process. That's so important.
Yeah, and there are obviously much more advanced techniques that digital marketing specialists will pick up on. But I think just where we're at the moment, we're just talking about the basics of setting up your website, and there may be several different user journeys that are needed if you're if it's potential new parents, if you're trying to build teaching posts, it's a slightly different user journey. Potentially a slightly different look and feel to the pages. You're trying to be a bit more professional. You're trying to get a sense of what the school is like as a teacher, the professional development that's available, so that the content on those pages would be slightly different. Perhaps video content from teaching staff that have gone through that process there. So that there can be different user journeys, and the information that you want from each of them would be slightly different. But you're right, there does need to be an end goal in mind. What is it that you want from the user, and to map that out.
Okay, so I think in conclusion, what we're saying is the mistakes that we see on websites and the common mistakes that schools are making is appealing to the wrong audience. Not really reflecting what's remarkable about the school that it represents, and not considering that user journey, or really knowing what you want a user to do when they've visited your website. And I think it all boils down to planning of the website and knowing why you're doing it in the first place. Ofsted say you have to have a website, and very often there's been no more consideration than that as to why a website has been created, but it can do so much more for your school. And you're not really looking at investing any more money. It's the same investment. You've got to have the website built, but with that little bit of preparation and a little bit of knowledge and expertise at the front end, it can do all of these different things for you. And you've invested the same money and you get so much more out of it. So that would always be our advice to schools, is to just step back when you're looking at that website and make sure that you're challenging whoever's creating it for you to achieve those things and to get those things in place for you.
Definitely.
Have you finished that coffee of yours?
No, I was just going to say, actually, could I just carry on now, because it's starting to get a bit lukewarm, and I need to...
I want to go and get some more tea. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I hope you enjoyed today's session. We'll see you again. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back. I hope you found the conversation useful. We certainly covered quite a lot of ground there. If you'd like a review of your own school website and advice on improvements that could be made to make it that little bit more effective, then please don't hesitate to get in contact. All of our details will be on screen at the end. And remember, we run our regular school branding and identity masterclass. It's an online course, runs for a couple of hours, and is a really great starting point for anybody that's looking to get a handle on their school marketing and communications. So if you're interested in that, again, get in contact. We'll send you over some details of when the next event is being run. Remember, if you like the show, please like it, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any episodes, and if you know of any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from our conversations, then please do let them know where we are. Next week, we have a very special episode which features Justin Smith from Chameleon Training, and he's going to be talking to us about the income generation and bid writing services that he offers to schools. Thanks for joining us today. Stay remarkable, and we'll see you all next week. I think what struck me at the time when you were presenting was just the massive array and different ways that schools can actually look at fundraising and get a handle on fundraising. So first question really, and the thing that occurred to me when we first met is what's the first thing that you get asked to help with? Where do they start with all of that?
That's a really good question, Mark. Thank you for watching Out of the Blue, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe and leave a comment below.